Good morning, I'm Chris Jansing. Turns out that a well-known white supremacist and former Ku Klux Klan leader is the man accused of shooting and killing 3 people in the heart of a Jewish community in Overland Park, Kansas, near Kansas City, on the eve of Passover. He's 73-year-old Frazier Glenn Cross. He'll be in court today, accused of opening fire with a shotgun and possibly having a handgun and an assault rifle as well. A local doctor and his 14-year-old grandson, an Eagle Scout, both killed at the Jewish Community Center. Police then say that Cross drove nearby to the Village Shalom retirement community, killing a woman whose name hasn't been released. The suspect was arrested at a local elementary school and can be clearly heard yelling hate language from the back of the police car. Listen carefully. Police are investigating the shootings as a hate crime, and the FBI is now involved. Last night, a stunned community came together for a vigil to pray for the victims, including Dr. William Corporon and his 14-year-old grandson, Reet Underwood.
I'm the daughter of the gentleman who was killed, and I'm the mother of the son who was killed. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate you all being here, and I know that they're in heaven together.
For the latest on this, I want to bring in NBC Justice correspondent Pete Williams. Mark Potok is senior fellow at the Southern Poverty Law Center and managing editor of the center's blog, Hate Watch. Good morning to both of you, gentlemen.
Morning.
Mark, suspect Frazier Glenn Cross has been on your group's radar for some time now, and he wasn't shy about hiding his white supremacist views. I want to play a clip of him from 2005 talking to our affiliate, KYTV.
We're fed up white people, believe me. And we're going to take our country back. White people are third-class citizens now.
So tell us a little bit more about why he's been on your radar for such a long time.
Well, he's an incredibly violent, scary, former Klansman and neo-Nazi. We tangled with Glenn Miller in a serious way back in the 1980s. We sued his original group, the Carolina Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. He was state leader of that group. He later broke the consent agreement that we reached with him. He went on the lam, became a fugitive after the feds discovered that he was amassing weapons stolen from the military, and also planning to assassinate the founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center, Morris Dees. And it goes on and on from there. Yeah,
I mean, obviously in and out of prison, of jail, and it is being investigated as a hate crime. The FBI is involved, and the president addressed this morning at the prayer breakfast. We just got this in. Let's play it from moments ago.
This morning, our prayers are with the people of Overland Park. And we're still learning the details, but this much we know. A gunman opened fire at 2 Jewish facilities, a community center and a retirement home. Innocent people were killed. Their families were devastated. And this violence has struck at the heart of the Jewish community in Kansas City. 2 of the victims, a grandfather and his teenage son, attended the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection, which is led by our friend Reverend Adam Hamilton. Some of you may know that during my inauguration, Reverend Hamilton delivered the sermon at the prayer service at the National Cathedral, and I was grateful for his presence and his words. He joined us at our breakfast last year, and at the Easter service for Palm Sunday last night, he had to break this terrible news to his congregation. That this occurred now, as Jews were preparing to celebrate Passover, as Christians were observing Palm Sunday. Makes this tragedy all the more painful. And today, as Passover begins, we're seeing a number of synagogues and Jewish community centers take added security precautions. Nobody should have to worry about their security when gathering with their fellow believers. No one should ever have to fear for their safety when they go to pray. And as a government, we're going to provide whatever assistance is needed to support the investigation. As Americans, we not only need to open our hearts to the families of the victims, we've got to stand united against this kind of terrible violence which has no place in our society. And we have to keep coming together across faiths, to combat the ignorance and intolerance, including anti-Semitism, that can lead to hatred and to violence. Because we're all children of God, we're all made in His image, all worthy of His love and dignity, and we see what happens around the world when this kind of religious-based or tinged violence can rear its ugly head. It's got no place in our society. So,
and that, Pete, brings up the whole question of whether or not this is a hate crime. Tell us a little bit about the FBI's involvement and what classifying it as a hate crime would mean.
In this case, I don't think much. The FBI's involvement is to help the local police. He's been arrested on local charges. He's been charged with first-degree murder, premeditated first-degree murder. Kansas is a death penalty state, so Kansas could, if it chose, pursue the ultimate punishment. Classifying it as a hate crime would not change that because it's already classified as the worst possible crime. So I doubt there'll be much federal involvement in how this is prosecuted. For now, the FBI will help the police gather evidence and the kind of things that they can help the local police with. But it's not, I don't think it's going to be classified as a federal crime.
Mark, we are so, I think, attuned, particularly in a post-9/11 world, to look at homegrown violence in many ways is either the result of some sort of mental illness or a terrorism, the kind that we saw on 9/11. If these shootings were in fact motivated by hate, obviously it comes at a time when the Anti-Defamation League said that anti-Semitism in the U.S. is on the decline. 751 acts of anti-Semitism last year, 19% fewer than a year before. And in fact, that's one of the lowest levels since the ADL started keeping records in 1979. But give us the big picture, because this shocks so many people, about the status of the Ku Klux Klan, other white supremacists, and other hate groups.
Well, I think the ADL is right that anti-Semitic incidents have been going down. The FBI national hate crime statistics reflect that as well. At the same time, however, by our count of hate groups and other kinds of radical right groups operating out there, we are at historically high levels overall. Something like 2,000 plus groups in terms of hate groups and militia-type groups. You know, it's not so much that the groups as groups plan these attacks, but they provide the milieu from which these people come. Frazier Glenn Miller was involved in a number of different groups, neo-Nazi and Klan groups, over the years, but for years he's essentially been operating as a kind of lone operator, although in tandem with a neo-Nazi website, a particular place called Vanguard National News.
And we heard the president address this a little bit, Pete, about the concerns as we head into Passover at sundown. And I know that after the shootings, New York's mayor announced the city was taking steps to secure Jewish institutions here in New York. How large is the concern? What can you tell us about the federal government and what they're looking for?
Well, I think this is based entirely on just a concern that there may be copycats, that other people may be emboldened by it. It's as simple as that. It's a step that is often taken anyway around the Jewish holidays in big cities. So it's not a difficult thing to do. They've done it before. But, you know, based on what you were talking to Mark about, we forget about these groups. We forget that there is this world out there. Mark lives with it every day because they track them. But, you know, until they do something like this, we sort of forget about it. But there have been incidents like this targeting Jewish groups. Buford Furrow shooting, for example, at a Jewish community center. These things happen every few years, and they're an unfortunate reminder that this world is out there.
You know, I think he's right about that, Mark. I think a lot of people were stunned to hear about this connection because we don't pay attention to it on a day-to-day basis. And yet when you hear, frankly, someone in the seat of a police car yelling Heil Hitler, we're reminded of an interview that he did with the shock jock Howard Stern several years ago, where he was asked, who does he hate more, blacks or Jews? He said, you know, without a doubt, Jews 1,000 times more. What do we need to know? What do we need to know as Americans? What do we need to know as a country about this? From someone who, as Pete just rightly said, lives with this day to day and understands it so deeply.
Well, just as you said, there is an entire world out there, and as Pete said as well, it's a kind of underground world, and it surfaces in the public mind from time to time. Pete mentioned Furrow, the man who murdered or tried to murder several children at a Jewish community center and did murder a postal officer. At the same time, right after Barack Obama became president in June of 2009, a very similar kind of guy, a well-known neo-Nazi and an old man about the same age as Frazier Glenn Miller, attacked the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington and murdered a guard there. A few years after that, of course, we had an attack on a Martin Luther King Day parade in Spokane, Washington, where a neo-Nazi bomber, who in fact was in contact with Frazier Glenn Miller, attempted to murder as many as 1,000 people. So it goes on and on. Just a couple of years ago, of course, we had the shooter who attacked a Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Again, a well-known neo-Nazi, very much like Frazier Glenn Miller.
Well,
so,
I have to say,
it's a scary world out there.
If people want to know more, they can go on your website. I spent about 20 minutes. You actually have a list of all of the hate crimes or anti-Semitic, anti-black, anti-LGBT acts over the last year. And it is an eye-opening 20 minutes that I spent. So it's on the website there. Mark Potok, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, from the Southern Poverty Law Center. And as always, Pete Williams and our in Washington Bureau, thank you as well.
Sure.